My name is Maytha Alhassen. I go by she, hers. I'm currently in unceded Tongva land. Some people know that as Los Angeles. And I'm going to give a ADA description. I'm wearing a green cap that says Sufi Center of New Jersey. I have a black top, couple of gold necklaces, and I'm sitting in a bedroom. I have long black curly wavy hair, and thankfully, because I got tan, I'm kind of a caramel color now. So hi everybody. I'm here with Randa Jarrar of Love is an Ex-Country, many other books, Mortada, Gzar, who's author of I'm in Seattle, Where Are You? And also many other books that I wish I could read in Arabic, hopefully inshallah soon. Thank you guys for being here. Before we go into our first question, I just want to invite you to give an ADA description and say hi and marhaba. Randa?
Hi, marhaba, ahlan wa sahlan, Free Palestine. I am a fat, light-skinned woman with tattoos, wearing a floral, low-cut dress, large breasts, brown hair. I have a painting behind me of an Egyptian man selling watermelon on a donkey. I have a kitchen also behind me, and I think I got that. Yes.
Thank you. Mortada?
Hi, thank you for having me here. My name is Mortada Gzar. I'm a brown man with a beard and a blue t-shirt with a hat, and behind me some planets and books.
Beautiful. Thank you. I've tried to do the first question and the ADA at the same time. It's just a lot of stuff. So I wanted to be able to set that up top for folks. It's interesting. You started with Free Palestine. I did want this first question for us to think about. You know, it's not often that we have a craft conversation and we come from similar places. And the other thing that it made me think about is when you're representing Palestine, Iraq, Syria, we're representing homelands of refugees. And if you put us all together, we're the largest refugee community on the globe. And I wanted to reflect on this because your books are about the politics of migration and movement at the same time. But I want to ground you with this quote, again, talking about Free Palestine, that is now recirculating from your book, Randa, Map of Home. If I can read it. Baba said that moving was part of being Palestinian. Our people carry the homeland in their souls, he would tell me at night as he tucked me in. This was my bedtime story when I was 3, 4. You can go wherever you want, but you'll always have it in your heart. I'd like to think to myself, that's such a heavy thing to carry. So your memoirs are replete with so much that you're carrying, and the ancestries and the histories and how we move with it together in present and forward. Just wanted you to up top reflect on that work that you're doing. Feel free to jump in. I want this to be conversational.
I kind of want the three of us to be in charge of the world, actually. I think that would be really fantastic. Yeah, I think that that quote in particular encapsulates so many different people's experiences. I mean, in the foreground is the Palestinian experience for me personally, but I think that this idea of the home and the homeland having to become internalized because the externalization or the way that it exists is impossible to maintain and hold on to in, you know, a world that is rife with imperial and colonial and settler colonial projects. So, I mean, I'm really excited about Mortada being here, and I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are about this.
Yeah, really nice. I like your quotes. Being moving is part of being Palestinian, and also I think it's not just apply for Palestinian. Also, it's apply for every immigrant that has a a story. For me, I'm a newly immigrant. I'm new immigrant. So, but also I have. I think now a lot of Iraqis, they consider themselves, they have like a huge diaspora now. The Iraqis now, just like they are everywhere now. So yeah, it's so this idea, I think it's also changed my way and my style of writing. Before I being immigrant, my writing was something else. The subjects and the things I used to deal with in my writing. Now it's different. Now I feel.
Can you go into that? How are they different? Yeah.
Yeah, I think now whenever I want to think about writing even a short story, or even now I'm thinking about filming a movie. So now I found myself, it's hard to think out of the circle of being immigrant. So I think that's something. Even like even when I choose or select a character that I need to present some idea during her or him, for some reason I found him or her an immigrant, because I feel like my journey of being immigrant carry a lot of things in very short time. It's really packed with a lot of stories that's maybe equal to stories that normal person can have in 20 years. So I think always the immigration idea has a lot of things, and still we need to dig in and need to write about, because it's very rich.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking about writing, I'm going to have you guys read some passages from your books so that people can get a beautiful window into how stunning, and I didn't even say this up top, what a journey it was for me to go through these books again, just to reflect that I'm sitting here with people and we're talking about craft, and it's very rare that I get to come from some similar experience from everybody that I'm talking to right now, right? Of course, there's nuance to it, but just taking this journey, Mortada, I'm meeting you for the first time, but I was texting Randa, like, I have the same exact story about my mom, my dad's father, he wasn't told. I mean, it was just such a therapeutic experience to go through these stories, but also harrowing, seeing what it means for me to live in some privileged places within our same communities, and to see what I don't have to experience. And we can go into that in detail later. But I do want to pick up on some passages. Randa, do you have your book with you?
Yeah.
She doesn't know what I'm going to tell her to read. It's probably going to be a very obvious one. I'm so sorry, but I think the world and America needs to hear it. Page 23 starts with Barbara Bush's response. And you can, and you can go on till the dot, if that's okay, on the next page.
So I was angry?
How did I start it? The matriarch, I was saying, yeah, you could go for that. I don't know why I started with Barbara Bush's response. That's not a complete sentence, but yes.
I was angry, as every woman of color in America is. The matriarch of a war family had passed at the age of 92, and when years before reporters had asked her about her son's impending war in Iraq and the deaths that would inevitably occur as a consequence to that war, Barbara Bush's response had been as follows: "Why should I waste my beautiful mind on something like that?" In a way, she had spoken ill of the dead before they were even dead by saying they weren't worth a momentary thought. Before this comment, she had dragged Anita Hill, saying that she didn't believe she had been sexually harassed or that Clarence Thomas was a predator. And years after the Iraq comment, she called Black evacuees in Houston who were seeking refuge from the horrors of Katrina lucky to be living in better circumstances than what, quote, they're used to, end quote. She even went so far as to say that their presence in Texas was frightening. "It's scary," she had said. Because I was angry at the media's positive hagiographic representation of her, and that women were tweeting their support of her, even in death, I took to my own account and mimicked the praiseful format I was seeing surrounding her death. I wrote, "Barbara Bush is a smart, generous, and amazing racist who, along with her husband, raised a war criminal. Fuck out of here with your nice words.
Yes, yes. Thank you. In a moment where, I mean, you wrote this, well, part of this story is that you continue to write this, right? Over probably 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And you received so much backlash, but to also see in this moment how he's being rehabilitated during a presidency they saw as an aberration of all other presidents.
Yeah.
How has it been like to think about that response that you received, which was horrific? You were basically doxxed, people trying to not only get you to lose your job, but attacking you and your family. What has it been like to think through that resistance of America to contend with the violence of its imperialism and domestic violence, right? Yeah.
It's been kind of wild to see his newest book. This, you know, I think like, I don't know. I think when I think of George Bush, I think of the word safah, which means like a butcher. He's a butcher. And so for him to have this new book now, I think it's called something like from one, I don't remember, but it's the subtitle is Immigrants in America, which is hysterical. And you know, to think about that legacy that him and his family made, like the way that Bush Sr. went in and just fucked the entire Middle East with bases. I mean, the way that the world was before 1990, or at least Arab countries before 1990 were completely different than the way they are now. That's something I feel lucky to know, having been born in the 70s and knowing that.
And having grown up in Kuwait. For people who don't know you.
Yeah, growing up in Kuwait and Egypt and being so close to Iraq and Iran. Yeah, Mortada.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to hear yours.
No, I was muted. I was just saying I was born in Kuwait too. So go ahead, please.
Everyone who, yeah, like Kuwait is just, also I think the water there made half of us queer. So just
oh yeah, no, wait. By the way, this is the story. Isn't Kuwait like the queerest and most like intellectually sophisticated of the Gulf countries? Isn't that the story? So you guys are hearing, yeah, you're hearing, yeah.
Which is great.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just kind of going through that experience just showed me that, you know, we have such amnesia in this country. We refuse to contend with so much, right? And that's why the abolition movement is so important. That's why it's so important to listen to Indigenous and Black voices in this country, because that's who the country belongs to. And us as people who have been exiled, who are here, who are privileged to be here, yeah, we need to continue with the work that started so many years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. And of course, Mortada, I mean, I have a passage that I'd love you to read as well. But if you wanted to reflect, because clearly you were the recipient of both Bush's policies during your time in Iraq, or you can jump in and read the passage, whatever you want to do.
I will read the passage. That's
because it reflects. Yes, it definitely reflects what we've been talking about.
Yeah, sure. It wasn't practical for me to use a pen. The American trade embargo was at its height, and virtually all families lived below the poverty line. Pens cost so much. It took days for a secondary school student like me to save enough to buy one. I used pens for my school homework, but made entries in my secret notebook with a reed pen, and food dyes. On Fridays and school holidays, my mother would place on my bag and cork books containing a dozen colored popsicle with a wooden stick in each. My job was to tour the alleyways shouting, even though I usually didn't speak much, and touting my treats on blazing hot summer days. My share of all this was the popsicles that melted before anyone bought them, since their primary ingredient was dye. I used that liquid as ink. My notebook became sticky, and it was hard to separate its dates. All the same, it was crammed full of entries without rhyme or reason. I just kept writing, feeling a need to record events and the conversation of the real people around me. It provided me with a great sense of relief. I would sit in our house's lofty attic and watch the world breathe and people move around like ants in the distance, looking for a bite to eat.
Sorry, thank you for that. So clearly, we get to see what all the Bushes have done, and of course, what folks don't know. So Mortada, can we also throw up the picture of Mortada, the one with the pencil? As you can see, Mortada wasn't only just writing, but drawing as well, and paid a price multiple times for his drawings. But you also saw to great lengths how much Mortada had to go through to actually write, and how cherished pens were, not because some sort of folky parable of like it within the Arabic language of the value of pens, but there was actually an embargo on Iraq that the US took the charge on, and things as vital as pens. And it was so interesting that I read this passage, because when I was a college student at UCLA, it was a very politically active one. One of the things we did to try to raise some awareness about the sanctions was point to pens and hand people pens and say, you know, in Iraq, this is something that's incredibly rare. And so you saw to the degree that you were using popsicle dye to write.
Yeah, I think those 10 years or 9 years in our life, my generation life, or even people older than me, or a little bit younger than me, this 10 years, the embargo years, which was, I think, the most tough years in every Iraqi age. And those years are really formed who I am now. Because we were, even the very rich people, even there were no middle class. They ruined the whole economy. Everything changed. And the most, like, what made me like think about it and also read about it, because you know, sometimes when there's like a huge thing happening in your life, but no, very big drama happening in your life, in your country, but no one talk about it and no one knows about it. So that's, since also those years are really make me who I am now, because I think all my imagination of writing came from these years, and I think the whole social fabric of the Iraqi society, it's all affected by those 10 tough embargo years. And even now, everything bad happening now in Iraq, it's heritage from those 10 years. It's tough, and it's really hard. Even, I mean, I'm not trying to like exaggerating, but really, when they ruined the Iraqi economy during the 90s, I feel everything now, even the radical movements like ISS or something like that, they are originally from those years.
Those embargo years. Yeah, and again, that's why I think your pieces are so powerful, not just as memoirs, but memories that turn into reminders of what, not even a reminder. I mean, I think a lot of folks didn't even receive that information about what the US was actively doing to squeeze Iraq, right?
Yes.
And then, yeah.
Like what you said about like calling those people are war criminal, and I always like to use this term. I mean,
and that's the thing. The people who are the recipients of the crimes from the war criminals are brave truth tellers, are brave firebrands, right? And so this is go on.
So I tried to point out something in my book and also my life here in Seattle as an immigrant. I tried to like describe how it's hard when you call someone a terrorist, or when you call him like a radical Muslim, or like, you know what they call someone like look like me, or like a brown person with a beard. They don't know us, but they call us terrorists just because how we look. So I tried in this book many times to describe and ask those people, what do you know about being a victim or a war criminal, a victim of war criminal like your presidents, or a victim of a real terrorist, or the terror that, or even the terrorist organization that your president are made. You made those people. So I'm saying I'm trying to describe my childhood and what's really was going on in Iraq in this book, to make people understand when you call someone you see out of the city in Seattle or in New York or anywhere, when you call him a terrorist, how stupid is that? Because we are not a terrorist. We are literally the opposite.
Well, there's a total disconnection to the kind of terror that this government has unleashed, which leads to a couple of, I have a lot of questions, but I see our time is even running so close down to getting to your Q&As, folks. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. They're going to be fed to me. So one thing that I was wondering as I was reading your stories, and of course this is a craft conversation, so I was so curious about the kind of permission that you give yourself and the kind of self-censorship that you also experience as you write. So this is a question of your relationship to how honest you could be in the storytelling world. And a few things kind of came to rise. Mortada, in your book, you talk about wanting to write everything and then getting to a place and wanting to write nothing, especially around the fear of how it's going to be received and how it can incriminate folks. Both of you use different names for everybody, mostly in your life, besides yourself. Randa, you have a section about being a thief, and it was just so poignant about how honest you were and why you led to that honest place. But also thinking about how the kind of honesty around queer love as well, and just erotica, and especially for you, Randa, well, both of you, what the price you paid for that kind of honesty about that kind of love as well. And I'm not giving any more spoilers, although another question is going to lead to a little bit more detail. So I was just curious what your process is in terms of permission and censorship, or delineation or boundaries, however you want to think about it.
Yeah. So for me, I grew up with being raised by a very frustrated set of artists. My mom, who was a musician, my dad, who's a poet. And so a lot of my Arabic compositions were actually dictated by my father. My father wanted to use all of that time with my assignments. And if you read A Map of Home, my first book, there's a section in there about how he dictates her college essays to her. So for me, my father is just sort of like the last of a string of many. I think he is like probably the least powerful of all, but like a string of basically masculine types of voices and ideas about how the world looks, what it should sound like, in language, etc. And so there was such great freedom for me to write my own stuff and to write in ways that were sort of very like tongue-in-cheek or dangerous when I was younger. Like I remember having a teacher rip up something I wrote because it included too much description of a woman's naked body. I mean, I was like 10 or something. But so I just realized that that language was very powerful, and that, I could do a lot with it. And then from there, the craft comes in, understanding that writing that way is radical. It's a radical way of being in the world and on paper, of taking up space. Our stories, it's so funny to think that like so many of Arabic literature stories are queer stories. They're queer, whether they're named that or not, right? And us in the West kind of wanting to have this sense of superiority, even though we have like, you know, a terribly homophobic, transphobic society. So, I mean, all of this is basically my way of saying like, it just didn't feel like it would be worth it to write or to dedicate the amount of time it takes to write a book and make it not be honest. Like that to me never just doesn't make sense. It makes more sense if you're going to put all those years in to take risks and to take risks, the ones that you feel comfortable taking. So for me, it's not comfortable for me to risk certain friends' lives. So yeah, some of the letters are, some of the.
So that's what I was going to ask around, like, what questions do you have, or do you meditate on whether or not I should include it? It usually is connected to other people and there. Okay. Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear what Mortada
has to say. Mortada.
Yeah. I share with you same thing when you said you wrote something about women bodies or something, of someone got them. Actually, someone got my drawings also about, it was, and I was in the high school. But before that, I still have that feeling, which is like dealing with writing as a secret, because that's how I start writing when I was a kid. And I published my first fiction book very early, like I was in my 20s. So I didn't tell anyone, even my family. I was scared to tell anyone. And I let them know about it by themselves. And I was captivated by the idea of like a very young writer, someone who's like writes when he's very, very teenager or something. But now I feel maybe I should have not like guide my life of writing early like this. I should have like wait more to make my writing more better. So, but I still have that feeling. I'm not able sometimes to share with people what I'm writing now. It's still kind of a secret for me until it's done. So I feel, but now what I do, I feel I'm surrounded by writing. I feel my life is started by writing that I should. And writing now is everything for me. When I'm not writing, I'm not happy. I'm not normal. So it started as a secret. Now it's the whole life.
Yeah. And it's interesting that as I'm thinking about through your books, your descriptions of your childhood, your father wanting you to become a writer, Randa, Mortada, your father secretly passing on books to you in prison that are covered with the Quran, right?
Yes.
You know, it's interesting, and I don't want to dwell too long, but you do have interesting father themes, right? Like where who you are, being queer, is such a refutation to the ways that they might have intended you to be, but the love is so palpable. And I just want you to, I would love to hear how you navigated that in your writing, and if that's helped relationship-wise as well.
I don't know, but it's been said that maybe what I'm seeing is like most Arab queer people, that they have some weird or special relationship with their fathers. I don't know. It's just a feeling. So, but it always was kind of real love or unconditional love. You don't know how to show it, to pay it back. You don't know how. It's something maybe very personal, but we always, as a writer, we try to mask it in our writing. We write it, we deal with it, but we mask it well, so nobody knows that we are talking about ourselves. So I think the theme of fatherhood, it's a big part of my writer. But also I think my big inspiration is not like my personal queer life. It's also I share with my like other Iraqi writers, because beside all of that, we have really huge things happening in our life, which is like wars. We started our lives by war, and we still have war. War never stopped in my country and where I live. So even though, it's still wars. My big like impact on me. And also fathers, they always have something to say. There's always father lost his son in the war, and also the contrary. Most of my like students I was with in the school, most of them, they lost their fathers.
Yeah.
So it's rarely to have someone with a complete family, father and mother. So, and now I find like a lot of readers, especially my Iraqi readers, they tell me all the time why we still writing about war. We need you to write something has no war in it. But now I'm thinking, maybe I'm not like trying to follow my readers, but I think it's the time to find another way to write about war, but without making you feel it's a war.
But that's fascinating. Think about our generation of fathers that are very tied to the world of war making, right? Of imperial, of settler colonial war, and what that means in terms of like dreaming something, a new home through their children, right? Going back to the theme of home and a homeland. So yeah, Randa.
I love thinking about these themes, not just as in like for us and our fathers. I like, for example, Mortada, like who's to say that American literature, since its inception, isn't war literature, no matter what it is. It could be chick lit and it's still war literature. It could be, a political thriller. It could be a romance. It doesn't matter because we are this huge machine. Yeah. And it's just all these different ways of really capturing what it's like to be in the heart of this empire. So I feel like it's such a funny, I feel like it's like this Western superiority, this idea that like, the stories here, especially white stories, are just pure craft.
Right, right, yeah.
That everything that goes into it, that it's important to write 8 novels about a divorce. Like I give a single fuck,
or an experience at Phillips Exeter. Like literally, there's an author that has written about like every one of his
or a first wife, or or I'm sorry, a first lady,
jealousy boyfriend.
About just stories, just awful. And Mortada, you're saying you feel bad that you published your first stuff early. I actually wish my shit had been published early because our stuff is still 8,000 times better than, a story about someone who grew up in New Jersey and is upset because her mom, used to make her go to step class. I don't care. And so,
but I got people, they always say, we don't care. We don't care about thousands of people being burned in an American bomb in 1992.
But trust and believe that some cis white man who watches this or is watching this now thinks I'm disgusting for saying what I just said. That our disgust with, at its heart, exclusive, shitty literature by white people is anywhere near morally on par with their disgust with our humanity. Like the fact that they don't see us as human, as our literature, as worthy of being seen as that, right? The fact that, like, I don't know,
or that it's niche, right? Like, or that it's categorized.
Right, we're niche.
We're niche. Who are only like exclusively focused on the identity of it versus like much deeper universal themes that you can find across time and literature, right?
Yeah. And I like to complicate this idea and to like think about, I don't know, and celebrate us. And
when has America not been at war, right? So like all its literature is a reflection of that war making, for sure. Yeah, that's something interesting to sit and think about. Okay, I do want to ask one more question before we go to questions, just because we have like fascinating images, and I invite everybody on this panel to reply to this. So can we throw up a picture, both of them, that we have of Tahia Carioca? We can go one by one. So this, you start out your novel. Yes, I know.
I love her.
I know.
love Tahiyya Karaoke.
Yeah,
Me too.
Yeah, and all of us. I mean, this is how Randa and I offline had such like a thrilling conversation.
She's a pioneer of women movement, women rights in the Middle East. That's what I think.
Yeah. So this is the image that most people know her as, right? Through Egyptian cinema in the 50s and 60s, she drops down, and she's kind of this gorgeous break into films. And then can we show the other picture? And then Tahiyya is kind of forced into the shadows of history as she gets older. Although, I mean, Randa, you can give a more detailed description of like what you learned as you started your journey about her. And I want to also invite like this conversation, not just on her badassness, but like the ways you think so deeply. And I'm a thin, skinny girl, so I will, and a little curve, tiny, but I will, I will definitely express that I have privilege, especially within the Arab context of how our bodies are policed, especially as women. Like it's literally the first thing an auntie will say to you is reflect on your body. So that was some of the most fascinating stuff I was reading in your book. So I'd love you to reflect on that.
The Tahiyya Karaoke stuff is she's just so incredible. There's actually one of the greatest, she's just very Googleable. So just go on YouTube, watch stuff of, clips of her dancing. She's very powerful. She was very political. She was very anti, a lot. And
very strong personality.
Very strong. And, I just
how many partners did she have again? 12? 8?
Those were her husbands. She had 14 official partners. Yeah. Which, that's nothing. So I hope that she was doing a lot more than that.
No. I mean husbands. How many husbands did she have?
14.
14. Yeah. Not
but
partners. I hope she was having way more partners. Yes.
Exactly. I'm like, no, I hope not. But it's funny. Like that was considered a lot for her to have been married 14 times. It's like nothing pleases everyone, right? Like, anyway, yeah. And I would suggest watching Yusuf Shaheen's I think, is it Alexandria Why? It was one of the movies he made. She plays herself, where she and a bunch of union actors revolt against the government censorship of their play.
Wow.
It's available on Netflix, so check it out.
They made a TV series about her. It's called Tahiyya, but I don't think it's well done.
Yeah, but I love that. I love pithy, like I love all that stuff. The fawazir, everything, all the cheesy stuff is so good.
And we have her living through the beginning of your book and kind of setting the tone for thinking through your own relationship to your beauty. It's beautiful. And so with that, there's a specific question to Mortada from the audience. In what language do Mortada write? What are the ethical issues, if any, involved in choosing a second language like English over the primary Arabic?
I only write in Arabic so far. Sometimes I do write some short stories in English, and which is bad. But my main language is Arabic. So far I'm trying to write in English. But I love my language, and I encourage people to keep writing in Arabic. And also that's maybe going to support the movement of translation between Middle East and the US or the Europe. So I think the only language I'm able to write in is Arabic. I always say writing in Arabic for me is like you are like flying, and you are very free when I can express anything I want by Arabic. But in any other language, it's like walking in one leg or something. It's difficult for me.
Yeah.
Even if I'm good at it, but I don't think so.
Oh, I wanted to read your book in Arabic for certain passages of how, especially you're talking about life in Iraq and some of the stories.
Hopefully, but it's not safe to publish this book in Arabic so far. So maybe you have to wait like 10 years or something. No, I'm joking, but maybe next year or something. Yeah.
So another audience question we have is, how do you negotiate this tension between straddling two lands? Well, I think there's multiple lands for folks here that are more or less antagonists. Palestine, Arab world, the victim, and the U.S., the colonizer, the colonist, the colonizer. So what is it? Yeah, what does it mean? I mean, it's not just.
I negotiate it by smoking weed. So,
you know, it's funny because this
that's how I deal with it.
This was going to be the way that I was going to frame this question, but I jumped to this space is that, you know, W.B. Du Bois talks about double consciousness and the power of being at the margins. And then just thinking about your stories, you're at multiple margins, clearly. And so what does it mean that you can provide a lens for folks for, like, what do you want Americans to know? That's like a classic one. But what do you want your multiple communities to know through that sort of not even double consciousness, but the quadruple consciousness that you occupy?
So I have this section in my book, and it's actually the part where I'm in a sex dungeon, and it's women only, and it's just super beautiful. And I realized while thinking about consent and kink, like the way that as someone who is non-binary, I need to negotiate and reject binaries and dualities. And so now I've been thinking more about the hexagonal of the self. So
hexagonal, wow! I love that.
I talk about like at least hexagonal, like how we have actually multiple selves, and those of us who have negotiated or straddled lands and been through wars and had all these experiences, and how that kind of just, it doesn't split me into several selves. It actually helps me see the selves more. I think we all have a multiplicity of selves. So, yeah, that's how I negotiate it. I think you kind of have to let go and learn that you're not the first person or only person going through this. And how did others read Du Bois?
Yeah.
I'm terrible.
It's okay. It's all good. Mortada, any thoughts on the question of straddling those worlds, or what it means to occupy so many different margins, and to navigate that? Especially, I mean, I think this question was looking at more of, as we were saying, a binary of colonized and colonizer, but to even think, like, as Randa gave us, hexagonal.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Hexagonal. Yes, exactly. I, by the way, definitely had a year of ESL, English as a second language, growing up here. But that's a whole other story. So those are the moments that comes out. So how do you navigate?
As there's Abdel Fattah Cleto said, I speak Arabic. I speak all language by Arabic. أتكلم جميع اللغات بالعربية. I'm just like, maybe more than him. I still feel I'm speaking Arabic now, and it's really Arabic, it's not English. So,
I love it.
This is Arabic. So
the way my dad used to make fun of my Arabic, and still does, this is why I feel a big level of self-consciousness, is you speak Arabic and English. And I'm just like, okay, well then why don't you just speak Arabic to me so I don't have to guess what the sentence structure looks like. But I wish I could speak the beautiful language to that degree, but that's the way you negotiate it. So another question, I was raised between Jordan and the United States. One parent is, okay, so.
I'm going to add to something.
Yes, please.
Which is that, just really quick, that the whole Arabic thing, when I first moved to the US, I was 13 and a half, and that half was really important to me at the time. And I would basically just translate everything everyone said into Arabic, because I moved from Egypt. Even though I spoke English, because I'd gone to English schools, I still translated it to feel a sense of comfort. And I remember like watching 90210 and like translating that into Arabic in my mind, and like seeing a Marilyn Monroe like video, like her singing something, and translating that into Arabic, just basically finding ways to translate pop culture and everything around me so that I could find comfort in it. and yeah, as also as a means of survival too, to feel like I belonged.
You know what's fascinating about that is that I try to translate everything into Arabic so that I can feel like I belong back into the Arabic language and my culture, or a part of that culture. I mean, I remember when I was in Syria, my father's from Aleppo. This guy from Aleppo was driving me to the airport, and he was just telling me in Arabic, "You know this, it's in your blood." You know, he was trying to like insist, and every single time I got to the English language, I would try to do that for myself. But you know, it's interesting, and maybe we'll stay on this point for a second, because we did talk about translation and that we're constantly translating, right? Like it's not one moment of you finally pick up English and that's it, or you finally let go of Arabic, or you go into a space of speaking Arabic. But you know, my father, he speaks English incredibly well, but when he writes as if the punctuation marks don't exist. So there's like a sentence paragraph. And I started to realize when I did translation from Arabic to English, that is actually a very Western thing, to think that like there's a sentence structure and thoughts end and begin with a verb and a noun, and how there's a resistance to the meandering, right? There's a resistance to where can your mind go if it's not made comprehensible to an audience, right?
Yeah. Also, I want to mention something. It's fascinating the whole Arabic. Now, you know what happened during the last week? Arab user of Facebook, they found a way to sneak the Facebook algorithm to not be blocked when they protest against Israeli attack to Palestine. So they find a way to write in Arabic without doubts. So Facebook algorithm will not censor this. So I think Arabic is very rich language, and it's wrong that what they say, it's not modern enough to be good use in the digital media or in the digital application or something. I encourage people, and even I'm working in tech companies, so I always encourage and have conversation with people to treat Arab language or Arabic language just as any other international or universal language. It can be, if English can go through this digital applications or coding language, Arabic can do it too.
Yeah, and I think I love that. I'm glad you brought that up about Ajam.
Ajam, yes.
Ajam, which is the way that like dots on letters in Arabic.
Diacritics, yeah.
Yeah, it's like if you kind of hide them or remove them altogether, you can sneak past. And there's that novel too. There's a novel about this, an Iraqi novel called Ajam, about
Sinan and Tuwan, yes.
Yeah, about sneaking letters in and out of jail by using off the diacritic marks. So
well, that's part of your story too, Mortada, was like trying to learn without the diacritics and to write for yourself.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, and there's also this sort of like interesting discussion of like the body of the letters being the actual body, the material, and the dots up and down are supposed to be the spiritual world, right? That's why, and they're vowels, right? And that's why vowels have a connection. I mean, I could go on forever with you all, but like, it also makes me reflect on what it means to transfer from world to world, and to like what we keep on our tongue.
I think it's an issue being like people like translators or people who are dealing with publishing Arabic books. They're talking about it now. What they call the global fiction, and also some translators. They try to make rules for Arab writers to read, to write according to, just to make their Arabic text in a form of being international. And this is really something I cannot, I mean, I can understand it, I can relate to it, but it's really something we need to talk about, we need to discuss, we need to not make anyone control the Arabic writers, even like Emirates prizes, like Dubai prizes, or those horrible prizes, or translators. This is really against the freedom of writing, or even against the idea of creativity. When they say, write this way, so your text, your Arabic text, is going to be global, because what they think is the Arabic writing itself, there's an issue with the language itself, or there is an issue with the subject that the Arab writers pick. There is also the style or the technique. So they think they need to be, just like sushi, they need to be Americanized too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting to sit with. Yeah, I have many thoughts. I will finish this audience member's question. It's a little bit longer, so do hold on to the details. I was raised between Jordan and the United States. One parent is a brown Jordanian and one a white American from the South. I'm interested in discussing identity as an Arab American person in terms of the use of the hyphen or lack thereof, in terms of proximity to whiteness or being white passing, in terms of identifying as a person of color. To be answered by anyone who would like to address it. How do you navigate these layered identities? I think to a degree we did talk about this. I don't know if you have any more insight.
Just use your white passing to help people who don't have it. Just do that a lot.
I don't know if you want to. I don't know if you want to speak to this moment that I think was it in Arizona or was it New Mexico, where you meet this person who thought that she could shit about to you.
Yeah. You'll bump into people who are saying racist shit all the time. Of course, I'm not advocating for you to like put yourself in bodily harm, but calling people out, but also calling them in, to having long conversations, but also like literally using your body to, protect others or to stand with others. I think that's one of the ways to go. And also, like, if anyone tells you you're not Arab, they're full of shit, like you are. So, yeah.
So we don't have much time, but I'm curious, what do you want people to take from these memoirs and your work in general and who you are as a writer and artist?
Should I answer? I want them to take, I don't know. The only thing I want people to take from me are notes. So just read my book, pay attention to what people are saying, love me, I mean, that's kind of what every writer wants, is just, to be seen, to be heard, to be valued, to be, to also open up, and make sure that others who maybe don't feel like their story is important enough or whatever it is to move forward. Yeah, you're all goddesses.
I love that. You have a chapter on that. Yeah. I mean, your whole book, but you have a chapter titled Goddess. Yes. Mortada, and can we throw up some of Mortada's illustrations as he's explaining as well? Because I do want to hear, what do you want folks to take away? And from your brilliant art.
Thank you. I want them to take all what Randa said, just like her. And also, I think I came from a place where people know a lot about the US and Europe. And I came to a place where people mostly know nothing about where I came from. So the subject of this book is mostly about this. I think we became more very, very human being when we know and care about other people that we never met, or they are not similar to us in terms of color, language, race. So this is the most great value of writing, which is telling something and make you care.
This is what I really adored about your books, was your stories start around a journey you're taking to look for something, right? Whether it's on a road trip, whether it's through Seattle, and then intercepted, and almost like the way that when we do travel and move our in locomotion, we are triggered to remember, right? We're triggered to live in a sort of past that the present is making sense of, that you do take us back to those spaces, and not just within your lives, but the longer histories that we are a part of, and not just on this land, but across the Atlantic. You know, one of my friends used to say, you know, the US didn't realize that it really, I'm going to say it just fucked up by trying to invade the Middle East, because you guys have long memories. Like, you don't forget anything. And I was reminded of that, Mortada, and Randa, when we were talking about the book world of Iraq, right? And my father telling me the story of the Mongolian invasion, and the Euphrates, and I think it's the Tigris, right? Flowing with the ink of the books, yeah. And so these are stories that all our parents are taught about their history, that also show up in your book. So it's an altar for you and the many ancestors that you bring with you on this journey for us to sit passenger seat wise. So thank you.
Thank you, Maytha. Thank you so much, sis.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Shukran.
Afwan. So I'm going to throw it back to PEN America. I want to thank PEN America for hosting this conversation and being so brilliant to say, let's do a conversation around memoirs, and like, fuck it that they're all Arab. Like, that's dope to have this. I just was telling them it's so rare. Most places are like, oh, here we have one. Mm-hmm. That's enough. But it's even more enriched to be together. So thank you, PEN America. And thank you, everybody that is tuned in. Be sure to follow everybody on this panel, Randa Jarrar. My love is an ex-country. I was going to say map of home. Love is an ex-country, but also map of home. Mortada, Gzar, I'm in Seattle. Where are you? And continue to follow PEN America as well. So see you all.
Bye.